Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the Caves Cast podcast. I'm one host, Jeremy, and the
And
other
I'm
host,
Ryan.
Ryan, and we're going over Ultimates. Sorry, I was like having a brain. I'm I'm
Sure.
literally looking at the back of it, and I could see the word that says the Ultimates, and I'm like, what is this,
That's a dope variant, though.
dude? Yeah, I was just gonna say, I almost grabbed the main cover, and I almost got this one too, but
Yeah.
I waited too long, and I only had this one in my pool, but. They're okay, so it's going through a second printing, right? Because they all the Ultimate books have.
Right.
What's interesting about this cover though is this is also going to be the 1 in 25 for the second print,
Huh. Okay.
but there's a little bit of a kicker. It's not just the plain gray. Do you remember how so this is John Tyler Christopher. Do you remember how he did that Thanos cover for the Silver Surfer book that came out like last
Yeah.
year? And it was like that purple background. And then the second printing variant was like the space background.
Right.
This one is going to have like some kind of like microchip kind of machinery background in the gray with it instead of it
Okay.
just being solid gray. I mean, it's
That's
going to look
dope.
cool. It'll look cool. I don't know that I'm going to buy the 1 in
Right.
25 for that.
Right.
But on the bright side, if anybody is out there and they missed first prints and they collected second prints of the Ultimate books, those were all done by RB Silva. The main cover for the second print of this is also RB Silva.
Gotcha.
So I'll probably end up getting that second print just because I'll have the set, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so like I I I guess we should probably start with like a little bit of context in terms of like Ultimate Universe and Ultimate Invasion and stuff.
Right. Right.
So as far as like the Ultimate stuff goes, it kicked off, was it October of last year? No, it was June of last year. It was last like this time last year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like the summer of last year and Ultimate Invasion started, and we saw the maker gathering these different kind of like the Forever Gate, a Krakoa seed, some other things that allowed kind of like trans-dimensional like teleportation. Basically building a device to create his own universe and kind of shape the world the way he wants to do it.
Right. He took like
Um,
all these like crazy like
yeah,
god tier artifacts from like pretty much every corner of the Marvel universe to make a
right,
copy of 616.
right. Which like it's already in and of itself really, really cool
Yeah.
because it's like I feel like that was only something Hickman would have thought of is like let's take all of these like portal type things and let's kit bash them together to make like to create a portal to a new universe.
Right.
Thinking back now, it makes me wonder if this isn't necessarily a new universe, but if it's a mirrored six, which kind of appears that way, if it really is a pre-existing universe in the multiverse, but it's been bent to the maker's will. You know what I mean?
That's the way I kind of took it. I always took it as he made an exact copy of 616 and then just manipulated the hell out of it. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Right. And that's kind of like looking back, that's kind I feel the same way. Um, but yeah, so like he encounters the Illuminati just before going into the portal. We haven't seen them since.
right,
Um, some like the events of Ultimate Invasion take place. He starts like cherry picking, well, practically every single hero that would exist in 616 and changes their origins so that they do not receive those powers. He snatches the spider from Peter Parker's shoulder before it bites him. He delays the rocket launch for the Fantastic Four, killing them all except Reed, who he ends up torturing for years and slapping the Doom mask on him and forcing him to call himself Doom, basically.
yeah,
You have Howard Stark, who is this universe's Iron Man, who works direct like side by side with Obadiah Stane and Stark Stane Industries, and it's War or Ironmonger, War Machine, whatever you want to call him, and Iron Man. But then you have like this kind of like Illuminati style, like almost like like the Cabal from
yeah,
Hickman's Avengers, where it's like you have the Immortal Hulk, who's this immortal pacifist who he's probably there's probably a lot of deep deep secrets going on there.
right,
You've got some other factions like you have Captain Britain, who is French, but he runs a larger section of what used to be Europe.
Right.
You know, you've got Magic and Colossus and some of those people in like the other part of Europe controlling those territories. And then you've got like Sunfire and some of them, like some of the what used to be Asia. Him and another some of the other characters from that region are running that side of the world. And then you've got Ra and Khonshu, which are basically the Moon Knights, and they're at war with Wakanda. So they run probably the majority of what used to be Africa.
Right.
Um, and the world is just bonkers, man, because it's 12, right? 12 different sects, like of the air, like of the world, right? Is how I understand it.
Yeah,
Or
there's like a map in here with it. It's kind of a lot. It's but it's Hickman, right? So,
yeah,
but yeah, we have like these are all just the factions right here listed. Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
so
Um, so yeah, so that all of that is kind of unfolding in Ultimate Invasion, and that the the meat on that really takes place in the final issue because over the course of this, there are different attempts to stop the Maker. You know, one by a Kang by 6160 Kang, and at this point we don't know who it is. You know, but it's really sick design. You know, like already. Um, he starts pulling uh the ultimates or what like like almost like a prototype version of the ultimates through time to stop the maker's plan for whatever he's doing, but the maker has some safeguards in place to prevent that from happening. One, he has a barrier around the city, but that doesn't last. And then so he moves to an alternative, and that being he just disintegrates the parents of these future heroes,
right,
so they just cease to exist. But then like you have the part where he invites Howard to work with Reed, but it's more so like you're my captive and you have to work together to build me this machine, and this is kind of where things are going to go.
right,
So they're tasked with building the Immortus machine or the Immortus engine, and that all culminates in the fourth issue being the final issue, and it's just like just a huge fight breaks out. Kang is now involved. Howard is sick of it. So him and Doom have formulated a plan to like use the Immortus engine against the Maker. And what ends up happening is Howard, Maker, and Kang are all frozen in time inside of the city for 24 months. And generally in comics, we would get a really fast timeline here. But it's all moving in real time, like with us. So, in 17 months from now, we're probably that'll probably be when we see what happens.
right.
Um, it is 17, right?
Yeah, I think it says at the end of this like 17 more months to go.
Yeah, 17
17
months
months
remaining.
remaining. Yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, so it gives them some time to kind of like, or what happens at the end of that is Doom searches and finds Tony. And when he finds Tony, Tony takes the Immortus engine and he builds himself a suit of armor, which looks eerily like Kang's and calls himself Iron Lad. And if anybody's familiar with Kang and his history in the main 616, Iron Lad is a young version of Kang that's come back into present day.
right.
Um, so really interesting twist on that with it not being Nathaniel, but it being Tony, which I think you and I guessed pretty early on,
Yeah,
you
they kind
know,
of made it apparent with how
yeah,
Stark was reacting to seeing his face.
right, well, right too. Like, and that was the other thing too, is like when the maker knew from the get like he knew who it was.
Right,
Um, After that, we get the events of Ultimate Universe, which introduces us to oh, well, I guess now is a good time. It introduces us to Thor finally, but in Invasion, we learn that the Maker has orchestrated things so that Loki is the king of Asgard and has locked Thor in prison for like what I think what I would assume is probably 1,000 years for
right.
probably
Mainly
a good, a re
because he got like framed for killing Odin, right? Like,
I believe that's what it was. Yeah.
yeah,
So, and then Sif was basically his warden, like tasked with keeping guard on him. He was separated from the hammer, all that. So he was like ineffective.
right,
So Tony and Reed took it upon themselves to start like gathering heroes or recreating these heroes after learning that this is not the way the world is supposed to be. Starting with Peter Parker, and I would assume T'Challa as
right,
well. Uh, the X-Men seem very, very disconnected from the rest of the universe, other
right,
than the fact that it's just taking place in the same universe.
right,
Don't have too many larger connections to the bigger story, but that could change at any given time. Like we could have a character like Sunfire and his people show up, and it kind of it make that connection to the
right,
Cabal there. It just hasn't happened yet.
right.
Um, I mean that well, that doesn't about sum it up because then that they find Captain America in the ice, and that was the end of that issue, essentially. And we go from that and them kind of like starting to form a team and think of a plan to stop the Maker because they have like at this point I think it is 2 years I think by this point
Hmm.
when because it was November I think when that came out. No,
What the?
Universe One Shot.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes perfect sense because that's 7 months ago, and that's seven, and it would have been from 24 to 17.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, it was in November. So at the end of that issue, with the Maker gone, this Cabal has kind of taken upon themselves to manipulate the world in their favor and take control into their hands because as of right now, it's just been the Maker running things, and they've kind of been his lackeys.
right.
And and what I think is the most interesting part about this dynamic between them is that each of them is a year, right? Or is it 10 years? Like I couldn't remember how long it was.
For what?
For like each of them is the enemy to the rest of them. Is it a year?
Oh, I do believe it is 10 years. It's no,
Okay.
yeah. It and I want to say it's either a decade or a century. It might be a century.
I
I'm
mean,
not.
either way,
Yeah,
regardless, for a specific amount of time, each one of these factions is considered the enemy to the rest of them. So they're forced to defend themselves against attacks, invasions, assassinations, anything that you can imagine. And then they're given the chance to basically apologize, join the good team, and the clock turns the hand over to the next crew.
right,
So now they're the enemy. So it's the Maker has orchestrated this in a way that he's always in power, and all of these factions get cut down so they can never get strong enough to overpower him. But with him gone, they're all making power plays.
right,
You know, they're all trying to get an edge. They're all trying to get one up on the rest of them so they can make that jump to the Maker's place. At least that's how I get it. That's how I understand it. Um, so that being said, they frame Tony Stark and fire a Stark stained laser at New York City, and it just evaporates several blocks.
hmm,
I mean, and we're to assume that that those people are dead
right,
because in Ultimate Spider-Man we had a funeral for May Parker and Norman and Emily Osborn, where the three big names because they're the three important characters to Harry and Peter.
right.
Um, so and we've talked enough about Ultimate Spider-Man too, but in terms of this kicks off basically right after that.
Hmm.
So they Cap is in the ice. Oh, well, in Ultimate Invasion or in Universe, Thor faces off against Captain Britain and gets stabbed. So he's down and out. And they're trying to help him recover and also trying to continue to build their team. It all while trying to figure out whatever possible way they can to stop the Maker. So they have their hands full with a lot of stuff.
Right.
Uh Now we are here.
Yes, sir.
And the Ultimate starts off, like I said, with them just kind of conversing on what to do next. Thor's down, Cap is still frozen. They're gonna go ahead and their first attempt to fix the world is they're going to like send themselves back in time to a point where they can start dropping all of these like catalysts for these heroes to become heroes.
Right.
But what they soon realize, like while this is happening, they also get reflections of the 616 and what these heroes are supposed to be.
Right.
This for me is the most interesting part of it all.
Well, because
Is
the maker has files on everything and everybody.
yes.
So
So like, and the fact that Tony and Reed now have these files, I'm very, very curious to see how this is going to play out
right.
because there's Hickman's clearly building to something between the two universes. Like, and you can already kind of feel it.
Yeah.
You have the first issue with his encounter with the Illuminati and them not even being like touched upon after that. Like, that's the only time we see them in that first
Right.
issue. So they're Hickman being Hickman, we're bound to see them again. But he's it's not even like a one singular reference to the 616. He is blatantly showing these characters what they are supposed to be. And what does that mean for them, and what does that do for their dynamics? What does it mean for their futures together? And that's all stuff that I'm super excited to get into later on.
Right. Hell yeah.
Um so they ended up trying to send like some catalysts back in time to get these people to join. And they were under the assumption that they would get hundreds of heroes to join them in the present day.
Right.
There's probably a handful of them that accept it.
Mm.
And they're like, okay, now we're back to square one, so we have to try again. Um, he's working on Spider-Man, he's getting Peter Parker the suit, he's getting him the spider. While that's happening, they're also attempting to unfreeze Cap, which this is like I chuckled at this because they wake Cap up out of the ice. And then he's all like, they tell him it's 2024, and he's all like, who's the president? And then they tell him that the United States it broke up in the late 60s.
Right.
And he's just furious, man. Like, he was so pissed.
Yeah.
Like, he's just screaming and yelling and throwing a fight. Like, they're sort of fit, dude. It's funny. I thought that was pretty funny. Um, so I mean, a lot of it's just character, like just relationship building between them
Right.
and learning what they could what their plan is going to be.
Yeah.
Um, there's a Spider-Man from like, oh yeah, it looks like only a handful took it. What's interesting here is you have a Captain Marvel, it looks like, or is that 616? I'm not sure, but based off this, I would assume that this is Ultimate Spider-Man. This is maybe an Ultimate Captain Marvel, but you also have a Hawkeye that's mirroring a Spider-Man No More moment.
Yeah, that's what's weird too. I noticed that too. I was like, what
So
the
I think it's safe to assume that this would be 6160 versions of these heroes because
right.
I wouldn't think that Carol would be that different, especially if this universe is pretty much the same. Because all the maker would have to have done is make it so that Marvel never came to Earth,
Right.
or she never, or the accident never happens and she never gets her powers. But and maybe Tony has a vial of Kree DNA and was able to give it to her. You know what I mean? Like, and we don't know because we're left to assume these things, I think.
Right.
Um, so they're kind of upset about it, and they just end up squashing that idea, and they just go, okay, we're gonna go and just do like a 2.0 version of this, and we're gonna try and just get people that are here now and get as many people as we can on our side and build an army.
Right. Because they basically say that when they sent stuff to the past, people probably were reckless with their powers and ended up killing themselves and
Yeah,
getting
killing themselves or just flat out rejected it, and they just were not interested in basically in joining in revolution,
right.
because that's essentially what it is. You have a small group of people that are ready to take on the entire world.
Right.
And I want to say that Cap even says that at one point. He's saying like, oh, like this isn't just like you building a team. Yeah, here you see this as it's like you can't start a revolution from your living room. Revolutions start on the ground, and heroes don't come out of boxes. It won't work. He said, and then Doom says, this is not a revolution, more like a machine or an
Right.
experiment, one to shake the world. This is science. And he says, no, it's a revolution. I know one when I see one. So I like the different perspectives here because you have Tony, who's probably pretty much in the middle here,
Mhm.
like knowing full well what he's doing, knowing that it's going to be a big shakeup to the status quo to this universe. And he has Steve on one side who's telling him, if you're going to do this, you're going to incite a revolution and you're going to start something that you cannot stop.
Right.
But then you've got Doom over here saying, no, 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 like this is just like we're just trying this out. So Doom is the most like enigmatic character in this book right now
Yeah.
because we don't really know what his motives are.
Right.
He spent how many years being tortured by the Maker, and we're just supposed to assume that he's just fine and he's just working with everybody like it's no big deal. Like
And
there's probably some ulterior motives.
and Tony even says, like, I tried calling him Reed and he didn't like
Yeah,
that.
he
He's
said, yeah, I only go by Doom. You know,
yeah. So
uh, we jump. You know, we shift scenes, and now we meet Hank and Janet of the 6160 universe.
yeah,
Uh,
and they are exterminators.
yep. And the best part about them being exterminators is that their little machine, their exterminating machine, is basically Ultron.
Right.
I thought that was so funny. Well, because you see him like toting it along, and it's got like
Yeah.
an Ultron looking face on it.
Yeah.
Um, and then so the Ultimate Superior right in front of them. Thor throws his hammer down on top of their van, and the hologram of Tony shows up. And at this point, is it Hank has already he already knew about this, right?
He got the basically he got the capsules that were sent.
Right. And he never told
No.
Janet about it.
This Hank
Uh
is too much of a coward to
yeah. And what's interesting here is we have a Hank who's already kind of teetering on that edge because when Tony tells him like this is for you, stealth suits to mask your identities and a sample of PIM particles necessary for you to undergo a post-human transformation. And then it says, you should have been heroes, but a great evil robbed you both of your destinies and left Henry with irreversible brain damage. And then Janet's like, your accident. He's like, I don't remember. So what I the Maker is really, really working these people, man.
right.
Because not only did he prevent them from becoming Ant-Man and the Wasp, he's also directly responsible for what happened to Hank, causing his mental instability, like right out the gate. Like
Mhm.
like he doesn't even, which is the one thing I don't know how to feel about because I was hoping that this Hank would be the good one. You know what I mean?
I think
And,
what
and,
it
and
is this is victimizes. Like instead of Hank just being a jerk,
good, yeah,
he's a
exactly,
victim. He's a victim.
yeah,
So
right.
we're gonna
Which
see
and yeah,
them
and it
dealing
gives and
with
it
those
gives us
problems.
right. It gives a sympathetic angle to him here as opposed to in the main universe where it's just like one mistake ruined his life.
Right.
And it eventually just spiraled to the point where his mind started to fracture. But here it's like it's a very core part of his character from the get-go, is we see that and I want to say that he even says like that he's hurt Janet, but he did not intend to and does not remember it.
Right.
Like doesn't fully recall what happened, but he knows that something happened.
Right.
And it's that I think is what I'm looking. It's weird to say that out of all of these great characters, I'm really, really interested in seeing how Hank and Janet are going to fit into all this.
Right.
I mean, and it's just been over the last couple years that like like they really just made a blip on my radar. Like, I've read like reading Busick's Avengers run really changed my mind about Hank as a character. I think he's super interesting,
Right.
and it just sucks that he's been kind of like been sidelined for so long, and he just gets the short end of the stick every single time. So the fact that we get a fresh start and a different twist on who he is and why he's messed up is the most interesting part of all of this for
Right.
me.
Because this Hank can be redeemed. The other Hank cannot. Like,
Exactly.
so,
Yeah.
and he even knows that and even talks about it. Like he's
Yeah.
worried about turning into that other universe variant.
Right. Exactly. So like, which adds another layer to that because now that these characters know who they're meant to be, are some of them destined to be those? Are they eventually going to go down that path and become like almost mirrored ideas of who their 616 counterparts are?
Right.
Like is Hank gonna fall down that rabbit hole? And are we gonna see an ultimate yellow jacket? Are we gonna see a lot of the same things that Hank has gone through, just in a different fashion?
Right.
Um, so briefly after their talk, uh, Captain Britain shows up with the Black Crusade. This line by Captain America is just
Hilarious.
too good, bro.
Yeah.
Captain Britain, the one screaming in French, which if anybody's read the Ultimates back in the day, does a letter on my head stand for France? No, it's America.
Right. I love
Uh,
it. And I love that Cap is still perplexed, and I love that they kind of brought that little joke over to this one.
and it was like way more tasteful.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we get a cool moment where Hank and Janet basically agree, like, this is it. This is what we have to do. This is what we're meant to be. And hell yeah, they are, man, because you get a really cool suit up scene for Janet, and she's ready to take the fight to Captain Britain.
Yeah.
And Hank is still right here. He says, it says I did. It says I hurt people. It says I hurt her, my Janet. I'd never hurt her, but I do. It already happened. See, so like, fingers crossed for the redemption, man. I really just want Hank to get a win.
Yeah.
I want him to.
Which he
So
pretty
they
much
join.
does by the end of this. He pretty much does start to get a win. So
Yeah. So like, and I really like his interaction with Captain America because he says, "But if I'm most afraid that if I become what you want me to be, what I'm supposed to be, that I'll hurt the people I love most." Cap says, "I don't have an answer for you, Henry. Certainly no guarantees. I can only say that that man is not you. His failures are not your failures. His sins are not yours. No one can make this choice." Okay. In my experience, Henry, there are times that call us to be bigger than ourselves for the greater good.
right.
The world needs giants right now, son. No one can make that choice for you, Henry, but if I can make an observation, you could have gotten rid of that thing at any time. Buried it, thrown it in the river, given it away, smashed it to pieces, but you've been driving around with it in arm's reach for 6 months. I'm no genius, but it seems to me that means something.
Right.
So the Ultimates are about to be on the edge of defeat. Thor and Iron Lad and Doom and Cap and Sif and all of them are just like losing the fight against the Black Crusade. And then you get a big ass boot that just
Yeah.
stomps them into the ground, bro, and it's Hank.
Right.
Uh, and then he just pops up next to Janice, says, "You said there's more to life than squashing bugs."
Right.
And I like the fact that there's like the Ultimates logo on his boot print.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was pretty cool too, that they
Yeah.
they happened to put that in his suit, just a little Ultimates logo.
Yeah,
Uh,
and then what's interesting is the news immediately takes to calling them super terrorists.
of course.
They're not, because they're owned by this cabal. Every single, I would assume that every news outlet, every kind of like, paper, what have you, minus the truth from Jonah and Ben, everything is probably under, or was under, the maker's thumb, and is now under the cabal's thumb and is still working against them.
Right.
And then you have a pretty sweet team up page. here at the end. You got the lineup with Doom and Sif and Thor and Tony and Ant-Man and Wasp and Cap and
Right.
man,
It's awesome. And I don't know, did
phenomenal
you
issue.
actually read this like letter at the end
I
too?
did. I
Holy
did.
crap, dude.
I
Like
did. Yeah.
you actually see how much like Tony actually looks down on his dad for
And which is interesting because like and I haven't read enough like main continuity Iron Man to know this for sure. But I was always under the assumption that he had a really profound respect for his dad, even though they didn't get along that well.
right. But I think in this, like since he took too long to act and it
Right,
just
right. And then the other part too is like throughout all of Invasion, Tony's telling him,
you gotta do
defy him, defy him, defy him, fight against him. This is not what we need. You need to do something else. But then by the time he does fight back, it's too late and he's trapped.
right,
So now he has to leave it. Now Tony has to pick up the pieces and fix the problem.
right. And that's what
So
he's saying. Basically, he's like, your sacrifice, it was too little too late. You
yeah.
should have always been fighting. We should have all been fighting from the start.
Yep. What's
I'll
interesting
always
too,
love you, Dad, but I'll never forgive you.
yeah, you were the smartest man in the world. You should have known better. And that is failure.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting though is if you look on the top left of this page, it says drafts.
Right. So he never sent this out. It was
Yeah,
just
this is
something
just like
he
he's
did.
getting it off of his chest
Yeah.
basically because he's probably waiting until he can tell his dad. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then we just get a little like classic Hickman with the
Yeah.
diagrams in the back.
Now here's something I want to ask. I wanted to ask you.
Yeah,
With this map here, it says right here, Latvarian territories. Do we have a victor that is not Doom?
I think that's a safe assumption. So I guess this is a good segue because it was in the Free Comic Book Day issue, I think, where they were testing the powers, right?
Yeah.
Is in it, and it's in that where they're, or maybe it's in this. I don't remember. I think it is in the Free Comic Book Day issue where they're testing on the rats, right?
Hmm.
And okay, and that's another good. We can talk about that too really quick. So in the Free Comic Book Day issue, that's like a 10-page story,
Yeah.
but it's like they've woken Cap up already, so it's safe to assume that it takes place after this, I think,
Right.
because Cap is awake. Everybody's kind of like rearing and ready to go. I don't remember seeing Ant-Man and Wasp in that,
I don't either.
but regardless, and they may not have taken the whole team out there, or it could have taken place at some point during this issue,
Right. In between.
because in that they go and bust out Jim Hammond, Human Torch.
Right. Which is pretty cool.
So hella cool.
Yeah.
So, and it was somebody that Cap had gone to war with back in the day. So they have like there's like an invaders connection right there.
Hmm.
Um, it's just cool stuff, man. It's just cool to see like everything we think we know about the Marvel universe shifted on its head.
Right. I was a
I
little
I
worried about Dennis Camp. I never read anything of his before, and I was like, I want to be doing
I
this.
only
I
ever
like it.
hear. Sorry, go ahead.
I enjoy this. I was worried at first that it wasn't Hickman. I had never
Yeah,
read anything about Dennis Camp, but I'm in. I'm all in. I'm stoked.
yeah. He did a book. I haven't read it, but I only ever hear good things about his 20th Century Man.
Okay.
I cannot remember who the publisher is for the life of me, but I only ever hear good things about that book. So I feel like that's something I'll be looking into soon, just to kind of get like to familiarize myself with his writing.
Yeah.
Um, I'm interested to see where this book goes,
Yeah.
especially after the cover for issue 4 that was shown today. Did you see that?
I haven't. No. I'm gonna look it up.
It's Reed Doom's mask with 4 rats: Human Torch rat, Invisible Woman rat, Mr. Fantastic rat, and Thing rat.
Oh. Oh.
And it's probably picking up where that left off, but the
Okay.
solicitation for that is Doom is so fixated on the life that he should have had rather than the life that he's currently living.
Got it.
So with him being the wild card on this team, who knows? He could easily turn heel at any given
Yeah.
time
Well, he
if
mentions that. I'll come in as I please.
yeah, like
Only
basically
part
I'm
of the
working
team.
for
I'll come in as
myself.
I please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the three components that I'm most interested in about this whole like everything, the references to 616, Hank and Janet, and definitely Doom.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unfold here, and I'm so looking forward to it, man.
Yeah. I keep saying it. I say it every week. The Ultimate Universe is my favorite thing going on in Marvel right now. I'm absolutely
Awesome, man. Yeah, no doubt. All right, guys, that's all we got for today. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.
later on,
Peace.
guys.